This is London.
Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, to the LDN Underground podcast. I'm your host, JKS, and I'm really excited to be bringing you another week of fantastic interviews with the stars and names behind LDN. This is a quick reminder, if you're listening in on SoundCloud, to give us a like and a follow. And if you're watching along on YouTube, to like and subscribe. It makes all the difference, so we really would appreciate your support. Now, before we get started with today's show and introduce my first guest, Sanjay would like to come onto the show to make a very, very special announcement for LDN.
I am pleased to announce that LDN Wrestling will be coming to a brand new area. It's going to be making its debut in Gibraltar, which is a British overseas territory right in Spain. We are pleased to announce that it'll be not only the first wrestling show we put on, but it'll be the first ever wrestling show to take place there ever. So we're making history. They watched it on television. Now, for the first time, they're going to be watching in person. And I'd like to thank the government there for helping us put on this show. I'm looking forward to it. I'm really excited. And you never know, our next guest, Paul Bristow, might be appearing.
Yes, that's very true. That's something we've been chatting about with Paul. Now, thanks for spoiling my guest, by the way. I was going to hype him and all that kind of stuff, but everyone knows now.
Oh, well, sorry.
It's all right. I can get on with it now. The magic of it's over. So, ladies and gentlemen, my first guest for this evening, he is the MP for Peterborough. It's Paul Bristow. Paul, welcome to the show. Thank you very much for joining me. I'm really excited to have you here.
It's a great pleasure to be here, mate. Thanks very much for the invite.
Now, of course, something that I'd really like to ask you is, have you always been a fan of wrestling? Is that something that's always been a part of your life, or is it something that you've recently picked up before your engagement with LDN?
Oh no! When I was a kid, Hulkamania was running wild. I was a huge fan of wrestling as a kid, and my guys were Hulk Hogan, Macho Man, Randy Savage, The Undertaker, Jake the Snake Roberts. These guys were larger than life, and I absolutely loved it. But I got to say, when Ric Flair entered the WWF, because we didn't get WCW back in those days, when Ric Flair entered the WWF, I've always been styling and profiling.
Fantastic. That's so amazing. So you've always loved wrestling, and then to come in and be involved in a wrestling show, that's fantastic. Within the capacity that you are now. So does that mean a lot of MPs fans of wrestling? Do you know other MPs who are big fans, who've been lifelong fans, such as yourself?
Well, a lot of MPs are obviously my age, and I think they probably remember Hulkamania running wild as well. But I've got to say, this is all really quite timely, because I know my friend Mark Fletcher, who's the MP for Bolsover, is planning to establish a all-party parliamentary group on wrestling. So an all-party parliamentary group is where MPs who've got a particular interest in a subject like wrestling from all parties come together and talk about the things they're interested in. And so establishing an all-party group on wrestling would be a really, really good thing. And it hopefully would put British wrestling on the map in terms of public policy. And I would love to hear from anyone who'd be interested in influencing government attitudes towards wrestling. What can we do to make wrestling even bigger in the UK? What can we do to make sure that we get more and more UK stars of wrestling, good, honest family entertainment, which I think deserves recognition?
Wow, that is certainly incredible news. That's huge news for the British wrestling community to hear, especially in these difficult times with a lot of shows being postponed or cancelled, and the uncertainty potentially for wrestling communities, because that's what they really are. They're not just companies, they are communities. So to know that there is potentially a parliamentary group that would be discussing that, I think a lot of fans would just want to know that the companies that they love have a little bit of assurance in these times that they will be able to get back up and running, and that there will be a future for those companies.
You're absolutely right, because I think, yes, you'll see the big companies from the States obviously dominate our airtime, especially one big company, WWE, and now I think AEW are coming through. But what British fans get to see each and every day are smaller local companies like LDN Wrestling. And so it's really important that they get the certainty, as you say, that they can continue, they can carry on. And they know that there are a group of MPs who are on their side.
Definitely. That's fantastic to hear. So, of course, you were involved in an LDN show not too long ago in Peterborough. And how did you find out about LDN? How did you find out about the show and how did you get involved?
Well, as you say, I've always been a big wrestling fan. By the way, I want to show everybody what I'm wearing now. You know, I am the third man, if you like, on NWO. This is when wrestling was big. This is my period of time. Thought I would get this out and show you, you know, that I have now officially joined the NWO. I was always the third man. It was never Hollywood Hulk Hogan. But
that's amazing. It's such a shame that this is an audio-only podcast, but we will have a screen. We're going to have a screenshot of that on the graphic or something. That's amazing.
Okay, well, my NWO t-shirt. There you go. No. So I heard it, and so I tweeted, look, you know, it might not be Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair. When I saw LDN Wrestling were coming to Peterborough, I said, look, it might not be Hulk Hogan versus Ric Flair, but this is good, honest family entertainment. Pleased to see them here in Peterborough. And then a wrestler, Joey Scott, who wrestles for LDN Wrestling, thought he'd try and be cute, try and make a name for himself, try and get on my Twitter handle and talk about my city and talk it down. So that wasn't going to fly. So I replied, and it grew from there. We were on BBC Radio Cambridgeshire. We were in the local paper. I threatened to come to the new theatre in Peterborough, the heart of my constituency, the heart of my city, and tell Joey Scott what I thought of him. And I did. And we had a bit of an altercation.
Yeah. And before we get to that, I'd like to talk about what it was like before the show happened. So perhaps what were your expectations before the show and maybe how they changed after the show of what it would be like to be involved in a wrestling event?
Well, I've never been behind the curtain, as you say, so I've never seen what it's like behind the curtain. So that was a great experience for me. Now, I'm one of those guys who always says kind of yes to almost anything, which is a huge character trait of mine. It's a positive, but it's also a negative. And so when the opportunity came to be involved in an angle, I just said yes and wanted to stick up for my city. And I guess the expectation that really left me with was, you know, it's a bit of a risk getting involved in professional wrestling when you're a member of parliament. You know, what are people going to think, you know? And some people are going to look down on it. Well, screw them. I don't care about that. But some people, you know, were incredibly positive about it and shows that I'm in touch with a sport which so many people of my constituency appreciate. And when I left the building, the new theatre, there were lots of people waiting for me outside. We had lots of high fives. So the thing that really kind of the impression it left with me is how friendly everyone was at LDN Wrestling, good family entertainment, and how it was excellent to be behind the scene and meet all the wrestlers. But secondly, how my constituents reacted. They were incredibly positive. So yeah, another reason to be proud of Peterborough. I'm proud to be a professional wrestling fan. Yeah,
I think it's definitely that kind of story shows just how amazing the wrestling community is. And how receptive they are to someone such as yourself being involved in a show and what that kind of means to them. So I think that's fantastic to hear about. Now, unfortunately, Joey Scott got quite upset by your presence and did cause a little bit of mayhem during the show. How did you find Joey's insults to you and your town and also his actions in the ring, which I've seen the footage were quite grotesque?
Well, Joey can say what he likes to me. That doesn't bother me. That didn't bother me at all. But when he talks down my city, a city that I've fought for years and years and years, a city where I grew up, a city where lots and lots of my friends and obviously my family grew up, then I'm going to take that personally. Say what you want about me, but don't talk about my city and don't talk it down. And so when he did, I guess he was just trying to make a name for himself. I'm not sure where Joe is from, but Peterborough is a fantastic city, and there are few places in the country that can hold a candle to my city. So when he runs his mouth, I made sure that I ran mine back, and yeah, you know, it got physical.
Well, the media coverage for this show was quite huge. It made BBC, TalkSport, and even Sky News. Did you receive any other feedback from fellow politicians or members of Parliament alike?
Well, I think a lot of my colleagues were interested in what I got myself involved in, but most were obviously very positive and said, look, Paul, you did a good thing, you defended your city, and that's the right thing to do. I remember one colleague of, perhaps one Conservative colleague of many years standing, said, you've done it once, but perhaps don't do it again. But I'm not sure he understood what professional wrestling was all about. I tell you who was very pleased was the Health Secretary, Matt Hancock. He said, he told me he thought it was marvellous.
Really?
I got
Wow,
involved in all of that. Yeah. So that was quite something. And I did at one point, it was going a bit too far when I got myself on Sky News, and I was somehow managed to find myself challenging Boris to a hair versus hair match, because he's got I've got quite long, messy blonde hair like the Prime Minister, but I'm not sure I fancy my chances against him. He's a bigger lad than me.
Yeah, the weight advantage certainly is in his favour. Now, of this altercation and everything that happened, I've watched the footage, which is on your YouTube channel, from the show. And there's a moment where Joey's got a steel chair and you go to take it out of his hands and he rips it back out of your hands, and then is threatening it with you. How did you feel to have a fully grown man with a steel chair threatening you like that? What was that moment like, and what was running through your head at that period of time?
Well, I'm not a wrestler, as you can appreciate, and he attacked me earlier in the evening, and something, it hurts. He attacked me, pushed me to the ground, and not only did he do that, he also stomped on me a few times, and he did that in my city, in front of my people, and so it was embarrassing. So when I saw him again challenging for the LDN British Heavyweight Championship, when I realised that this man who would talk about my city like this would attack someone who's not a professional wrestler, he was this close to having the British Heavyweight Championship, and he was cheating as well after knocking out the referee. That for me couldn't fly. So I wanted to get in there and show him that people in Peterborough aren't to be messed with. So I grabbed the chair and I just saw red. I didn't, I was very, very obviously concerned, but the adrenaline was pumping at that time. And when he missed the chair shot, and when Alan Lee Travis hit him with the rock bottom, I just knew I had to be there, count the three, and make sure Alan Lee Travis retained the British Heavyweight Championship, and Joey Scott was where he deserved to be, staring at the ceiling.
Exactly. So really it was about readdressing the balance in that situation and making things fair. As you say, Joey was cheating. He knocked out the referee and he did a lot of things that someone should not be doing in a wrestling match. So really it was about just sort of readdressing the balance and putting things back in order.
And also getting a bit of revenge for all the things he said about my city.
Definitely. So overall, how did you find the event?
Oh, it was fantastic. Sanjay and the boys were fantastic. I enjoyed meeting a lot of the talent, enjoyed meeting a lot of the fans. I've been a professional wrestling fan I'm 41 years old now, so I've been a professional wrestling fan for over 30 years. And so to be involved in a professional wrestling angle like this, a professional wrestling event like that is... I was about to say a dream come true. Yeah, it was a dream come true. So I did LDN wrestling this year. I'm in WrestleMania next. Who knows?
So you think we'll see you back at LDN sometime in the future?
Oh, I just heard about a great event in Gibraltar. Gibraltar's
yes.
An overseas territory of the UK. I'm a huge supporter of British overseas territories. Indeed, my last question in Parliament on Tuesday was about what assistance we're giving to our British overseas territories during this COVID emergency. And if a wrestling event's in Gibraltar, that seems to be the place that Paul Bristow would suit very well.
Well, I look forward to possibly seeing you there in the future. Now, before you go, my next guest for the show is someone who you know all too well, Hotshot Joey Scott. And he has asked for a little bit of time to speak to you, to address to you on the show. So if you don't mind just sticking around, we're going to bring Joey on and just see what he has to say.
Well, I hope it's going to be an apology.
Hopefully so. We'll have to find out and see. So Joey, welcome to the show.
Hi, Justin. Thanks for having me. Paul, shut your mouth. I don't know what business you feel you have in the wrestling business, but I'll tell you what, you're going to be embarrassed again. You turn up to another LDN wrestling show, and this time I'm not going to be responsible for my actions. You've come on this show running your mouth yet again, lying to Justin, saying you're getting involved because you want to stick up for your great town. You want the LDN champion, Alan Lee Travis, to retain his champion. You weren't scared at all when I had that show. I'll tell you a fact. This is exactly what was going through your head. You were thinking, how am I going to let the scumbags of Peterborough not know that I've got a little bit of pee-pee trickling down your legs because you are scared of me, Paul Bristow. You're dead scared of me. I dare
Joey,
you.
can I ask you a question? Joey, can I ask you a question? How did that match end? How did your British Heavyweight Championship match end? Who was staring at the lights?
You're just some no good, dirty politician from some dirty town of Peterborough. This is a wrestling podcast. I think people want to hear from a wrestler. So why don't you get on your bike and do one, pal?
All right.
Joey, all I'll say to you, the last time you and I were in a ring together, there was only one man staring at the lights. I'm not a wrestler, but I know the decent people like Alan Lee Travis, who's going to stick up for justice, who's going to stick up for doing things the right way. You're always going to end up on your backside, my friend.
Oh, how cute. I'll see you
with that, I will say, Joey, that I think you're embarrassing yourself and the company. And until Paul has finished his interview, we're going to have to cut the line off on you because I think you're a disgrace to what you're doing right now.
Don't you dare cut the line on me.
All right.
You cut him off.
Okay, right, yeah, I will do, yeah. Okay, right. Let's just re-establish some balance there. That was quite a heated few moments. So, Paul, I want to thank you so much for joining me. I really appreciate your time. You've done a fantastic thing getting involved with LDN, bringing your influence and putting a spotlight on what is a fantastic company. So I'd like to thank you for that as someone who's wrestled for LDN and been a part of that company. And then I'd like to thank you for joining me for the podcast today. It's been incredible to have you on.
Thank you very much, man. Really enjoyed it. Really, I'm happy to come and support the company whenever I can. But look, what is that guy's problem? It's happened once, and that was supposed to be the end of it. And what's he doing? He's causing more trouble. But look, it's great. It's great to be here, my friend. I really enjoyed it, and thanks for having me on.
All right, thank you very much. I really appreciate it. Stay safe, and hopefully we'll talk again soon. Well, I have to say that was certainly an interesting interview with Paul Bristow, even though it was broken up a little bit by hotshot Joey Scott. Now, ladies and gentlemen, at this time, I'd like to remind you to like and subscribe on YouTube and to make sure that you're following us on SoundCloud, especially because next week I'm going to be joined by Married at First Sight reality television star and wrestler Jason Carrion. So please make sure that you follow along, keep on the LDN Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram to keep up to date and make sure you don't miss what is going to be an incredible episode. Now, at this time, I'd like to bring back who was meant to be my second guest, although he did interrupt my first interview, but we'll put that aside. I'd like to bring back hotshot Joey Scott. Joey, welcome back if you're joining me, and I'd like to thank you for joining me, and let's just have a civil interview and just a nice little chat and move on from what we had a few moments before.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm happy to be here. I've always wanted to do a podcast, so I'm quite excited to be getting into this.
Yeah, so basically the way that we're doing this podcast with the wrestlers, it's an opportunity for the fans to kind of interact a little bit with the wrestlers through me, in the sense of I'm going to ask you some questions about your career and your experience with LDN, and hopefully the fans will get to know a little bit more that they perhaps wouldn't know from just coming to the shows and seeing you wrestle.
Sounds good, man.
Fantastic. So how long have you been wrestling?
So I started training in 2008. At a gym in Peterborough in Birmingham. It was founded by a World of Sport wrestler, Steve Logan. So I started training there, and I left there in 2014 because how it was there was a lot of promotions back then. You were only allowed to wrestle for them, so you weren't allowed to go elsewhere. You weren't allowed to train elsewhere. And I think if you want to be a professional wrestler, you've got to wrestle as many places as possible. You've got to get as much experience from different people and whatnot. So I left there in 2014. So when people ask me how long I've been wrestling, I tend to say since 2014, because that's when I really feel like I became more of a wrestler.
Yeah. But
I officially started training in 2008.
Okay, that's fantastic. So, you've been on the scene a long time, although you really came into your own, from 2014. And at what point along that journey were you introduced to LDN wrestling?
So I did the first show, it would have been late 2016.
Uh-huh.
I think it was coming up to the end of the year. I think I had about 2 shows left. Yeah, so I started up in 2016 and I've been with them ever since, to be honest. They've run so many shows, so it's just great ring time, really.
Yeah, obviously with LDN, there's a fantastic opportunity to tour the country, to do a great deal of shows, in a short space of time, especially with those tours where you might do, 17 shows across a few weeks.
Exactly, yeah.
What I wanted to know is, you've obviously traveled, quite far and wide with LDN. Of all the venues that you've performed in, what do you think your favorite venue would be?
I've got two. So my first one, it has to be Clacton.
Yeah.
I think when you walk in there, it is like a wow factor. And like when you walk out as well, like the crowd, it just goes up and up and up. And I don't know, I don't want to sound cliche, but you feel like a wrestler when you come out.
Yeah.
I think, what you see on TV with the tiered seating and the hard cam looking out, and all you see is like the fans going up. But that's exactly what you see. And obviously the lights, it's great production there as well. Yeah, Clacton's a real good one. But then another favourite for me, it's quite a small venue, but it's in Deal. The crowd is just wild.
Yeah.
Like that, like they're so easy. Like they're up for everything.
Yeah, I definitely think, yeah.
When you go out and wrestle there, the atmosphere is just immense.
Yeah, I think sometimes smaller crowds, if they're really into it and really receptive, can feel just as big as like, a huge auditorium or something filled with people.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. And of all the time that you've been wrestling then in LDN, what do you think possibly one or two of your favourite matches would be? Of course, you'll have had, hundreds, if not thousands of matches over the last couple of years. But if there's one or two in particular that have really stood out, what would those be?
Oh, this is hard because I've got quite a few moments now with people where I don't want to leave them out. But
yeah,
I think wrestling in New York against Jason Carrion that's got to be up there because I've always enjoyed wrestling Jason anyway. We've done it like all around the UK, but to go over to New York, that's just a dream come true for me. That was like, I remember just before I went out the curtain, like I was so nervous, and I just felt amazing when I walked out, like to be in America. It's like, it's cool to go to America, never mind to wrestle out there. So I think that's definitely got to be up there.
Yeah.
Another one, me and one of my good mates, Harry Singh, we are traveling to a show. We got booked last minute. I think some guys had dropped out of the show and they needed some other wrestlers. Now, we live in the Midlands. I think a show was in Folkestone or something. So we're like bumming it up a motorway to try and make this show. And we're about, 20 minutes away. And we get a call from the promoter asking us, like, how far are we? Like, they can't really delay the show anymore. They managed to delay the interval a little bit. And I think we turned up just as a second, the main event was about to start. And we just had to go straight out there and wrestle. And I think that was a little moment in itself, because working so much with Harry at the time, we're working week in, week out. I think that was just a real fun moment, and we got to try some new stuff, and it was just enjoyable, really. But yeah, I've had other really fun matches. I enjoyed working Sabu when he was over. That was crazy because I watched him growing up as a kid, so to get in the ring with him was cool. And another standout moment was when I got presented the first Capital belt when I won it against MJF. I got presented by Johnny Kidd, so that was another cool moment. But yeah, I'd say them really. They stand out the most.
Yeah, certainly to have a star of wrestling past hand you a championship when you've beaten a star of wrestling present, certainly an incredible moment.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, he's doing amazing for himself over in America at the moment. So yeah, it's just great for everyone, really. So.
Yeah, and speaking of the Capital Championship, you're now a two-time Capital champion, if I'm correct. How does it feel being a representative of the company?
Yeah, it's good. I think I'm quite happy that, they trust me to, represent along with the other champions. So, yeah, it's a good feeling.
Yeah, certainly. So this brings us back round to the start of our interview, or the pre-interview almost. Your feud with Paul Bristow. Now, let's keep things calm. Where did all this come from initially, and how did things escalate to the point that we're at now?
It all started with a Twitter post. I think Paul had put something saying I think he was just going to turn up to this wrestling show, and I thought, hang on a minute, Paul, like, what business have you got coming to a wrestling show? You're a politician, and he's trying to steal the limelight from the boys on the show. So I thought, no, I'm going to say something here, and it blew up from there, and we ended up going on the radio that day, and then I think he let the lights get the better of him, and I think he thought he could say what he likes, and I showed him that he can't really do that. It's not the case. It's my world. It's not a politician. It's this isn't politics. This is wrestling, and I think he learned that night.
So, obviously, currently we're in the middle of a global pandemic. Wrestling shows currently are not happening. Hopefully, they could restart soon, but things are starting to look less likely by the day. But when wrestling shows do restart and when the community gets back together, what are your plans for the future?
I just want to keep. This time off, I've really, really missed wrestling, and I think it's a time where everyone can reflect on what they can improve on in themselves in their wrestling career. So I think I just want to come back and perform at my best. I want to be able to not show any ring rust. I want to be able to have the best matches of my career and hopefully have a few more, years before. You never know what's going to happen down the road. I mean, I'd love to say I'm, going to go all the way, but you never know. I mean, there's so many guys and girls now in the country, in the world, doing great things. So I think, just join the ride really with all of them.
Yeah, I think something that I've experienced, I'm only 18, about to turn 19, and I've been wrestling a couple of years, but I see guys who started younger than me, and I look at them and think, and see how well they're progressing, and just think to myself, sometimes, and it's wrong to think this because everybody takes their own journey with it, but I look at them and be like, oh my God, did I start too late? I started at 16, and I'm thinking, have I gone too slow with this? Look at where they are, and look at, but you can't
people progress at they progress at different levels, and it's not just that. I mean, it's if opportunities present themselves at the right time. I mean, I've seen some of the best wrestlers and work with some of the best wrestlers in the world, in my opinion, but they haven't been seen by the right people or whatnot. I think a lot of it is on talent, but I think there's a lot of luck involved as well if you're in the right place at the right time, or if the right people have seen the right match of yours or whatnot. So
yeah, definitely. I think
obviously there's a lot what goes into it, but
Well, that sounds like a nice.
You can only work hard, can't you?
Yeah, you can't. Yeah, it's absolutely true. You can only work hard, and I'm wishing all the best for you. Hopefully, you'll come out of this pandemic and go back to shows and be able to represent LDN, take the Capital Championship far and wide, and really promote the brand.
Yeah, I mean, I hope everyone does. I mean, it'd be horrible to think that, like before the pandemic, some people might have been going, pushing quite hard, getting closer to their goals, and maybe not everyone will come back after a pandemic. So I think that's a harsh and horrible feeling to think, but it'd be good if everyone can come back feeling positive and push forward.
Yeah, definitely. And, hopefully we'll see everyone back at the shows like we used to. I'm hoping that the fans, all the fans that we saw before at the LDN shows rejoin us just the same as they did before. I really think they will. And hopefully this podcast is a nice little outlet for them to still feel that they're engaged in the company, and the company still, giving them some kind of content to enjoy.
Yeah, well, my hope is, obviously this time where people haven't been able to watch shows, I think hopefully they'll have all missed it. So I'm hoping crowds are going to be bigger when we actually do finally get the green light to put on shows again. Because obviously before we went on lockdown, I think the country's quite oversaturated in different wrestling promotions. So there's a lot of wrestling. And I think even for like the hardcore fans, there's almost too much wrestling for them they can't watch it all. But I think this break we've had, I think it'll be great if the crowds can grow and, get bigger, because they've missed it really. I think it's not just hard on the wrestlers, it's hard on all the fans. What I've missed doing something on the weekends, going and watching them in the local towns, and there's some great towns out there for wrestling, which LDN, they travel around the country. So
yeah, certainly couldn't agree with you more there. Joey, I'd really like to thank you for joining me for this interview. I really do appreciate it. Enjoy the rest of your day, and thank you again for joining me.
Thanks for having me. Watch how you go.
So, carrying on with today's episode, I've got 3 guests from Pro Wrestling Magic in New Jersey. I'm really excited to introduce Team AMS, Alex Ryman and Steve Off, and SJ Higgins. Welcome to the show, guys.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
No, thank you for having us, man.
Thank you very much for joining me. I really appreciate it. And I'm glad we managed to work out the time difference to get you on at a time that sort of suits everyone. It's really great to have you. It's really great to be able to bring this podcast, and bring an international audience in. It's fantastic for me, and I really appreciate you joining me.
Looking forward to it. It's our pleasure.
Amazing.
Yep.
Amazing. So what I wanted to kickstart with is, Steve, I wanted to know, how long have you been running Pro Wrestling Magic?
So I don't run it by myself. I'm on the board of investors, if you will.
I see. Yeah.
I don't know what the shoot term for that is. It's like what we call it in the storyline. But yeah, I'm on that team of owners, investors and whatnot. I've been on for 5 years since day one. Actually, a little longer than that, before the company officially had started up. So probably more like 6 or 7 years. I forget how long it was kind of in formation, but we started in 2015, and I haven't since.
Okay, so you're sort of part of a wider team who invest into maintaining the company, keeping it going, and getting the shows together.
Yes, sir.
Amazing. Well, really excited to have you here. So obviously you've been sending people over to work with LDN for the last couple of years now, and you've had LDN come over and done a show, Magic versus LDN. How did you first hear about LDN wrestling?
So one of my business partners and my former original tag team partner, Anthony Iovino, he mentioned it to me. I don't know exactly how he got in touch with Sanjay, but he mentioned LDN to me. He said, hey, we should try this out. This hot company in the UK, and, they got really good talent, and they want to send some of them over, send some of our guys over. I'm like, yeah, screw it. Let's do it. Why not? It could be a fun time. Looked into some of the guys on via video, and they were all talented. So we went with it.
Amazing. Now, my next question is for SJ. So, Sean.
Yes, sir.
Obviously, quite a lot of the Magic roster have wrestled in LDN. We've had Jason Carrion, Vinny Pacifico, Darius Carter, just to name a few. What's the general feedback that you get from the roster when they come back from working with LDN?
Typically when the boys come back working from LDN, they really have very positive feedback. I had spoken to Jason Carrion a lot before I went over, and he's explaining how passionate the fans are, how great the wrestlers are over on your side of the pond. Honestly, everyone I've spoken to said it's one of the best life-changing experiences.
Wow, that's quite a statement to make, a life-changing experience. I definitely think there is what's been clear from doing last week's interview. I had Steve Gibkey on talking about the difference between the American and the UK kind of culture within wrestling. It definitely is kind of a culture shock when you come over and perform in front of a different set of crowds, a different kind of community of wrestling, and also to be doing a different kind of setup, because obviously the shows, you could do a 2-3 week tour over here in the UK, and that's kind of more commonplace to do, especially with a company like LDN.
Absolutely. The touring was the most exciting thing, just getting to see different parts of the UK, meeting all sorts of new people. And honestly, the LDN fan base is one of the greatest fan bases we've ever performed in front of. I mean, they were so positive, so welcoming. It was amazing.
Yeah, I can definitely 100% attest to that. I've done a couple of shows the last year with LDN, and every single one, the fans have just been absolutely off the hook and 100% with the show. Now, Alex, how long have you been teaming with Steve?
We've been teaming for, 3 years now?
Going on 3, yep.
Yeah, going on 3. And, it started out as a little faction in Pro Wrestling Magic called Kill the Magic. And the idea was to actually tag myself and Mike Donovan together. And we had actually done like a 6-way that we teamed first together with Mike.
I think it was something like that, yeah.
And then after that, it was like we noticed that we had really, really good chemistry together. And we thought we can, make something out of it. And we decided after that to start teaming together, and it's been off to the races since.
Yeah, and so what's the experience been like, sort of forming a tag team? What have you found? What were perhaps the difficulties in the early days, or the successes as you got used to working together?
The difficulties are the usual, like growing pains. You know, you got to kind of going from a singles wrestling to a tag team is strange. You know, you got to start thinking not just for yourself, but for your tag team partner as well. Luckily, Steve has been in wrestling a bit longer than I have. I think by about 45 years.
I'm
he's
old.
had more
Yep.
experience than me. And he's actually helped me out a lot in learning tag team psychology, because he's been in a lot himself. I've only been in a handful, and none of them have ever had the longevity that Steve and I do, because Steve and I have a natural chemistry together.
Okay, fantastic. So obviously Pro Wrestling Magic and LDN did a show together. It was LDN v Magic. I just want to get a little bit of feedback from you guys, especially Sean. What was that show like? What was the experience like, having two companies, you know, do a show, a company versus company kind of show?
I'll tell you, it was a lot of fun, especially when LDN came over here to the States. We, you know, I was myself had not been exposed to a lot of British wrestling at that point, and just seeing the styles, the pure athletes that came over. I mean, Alan Lee Travis, I cannot say enough about that man. He is not only a gentleman, but one of the best technicians I've seen in ring. It was an
May or
honor,
may not have
really
committed a
privilege just to
murder.
learn from those guys.
Going out without you. I'm going myself.
Oh, one sec. We'll just if people could, if they put themselves on mute just whilst they've got anything going on in the background, just because it'll pick up on the whole recording. But that's
Is it
right,
Steve?
that's fine.
It might be Steve, I think.
Yeah, my kid is not behaving, so.
That's all right.
Damn it,
Don't worry
Steve.
about it. We can little bits of background.
He
noise,
behaves
we can-
better than Steve Gibkey, that's for sure.
Damn right, and smarter too.
I'm going on mute again.
All right, okay, we'll carry on. It's fine. I can cut between stuff, so it's not a problem. I've learned how to edit a podcast in a week, but I'm doing all right. I prefer the wrestling. Right, okay, we'll carry on. So, Alex, yourself and Steve defeated Ollie Lloyd and JJ on that show. What was that match like? What was the experience like?
I'm sorry, who was that one for? I completely.
That's all right. That's for Alex. Alex and Steve, you both defeated Ollie Lloyd and JJ in the match in Pro Wrestling Magic versus LDN. What was that match like?
I'm gonna speak really candidly on this one. I don't like Ollie Lloyd. I think it was Ollie Lloyd. You know, he kind of went into business for himself and had a little bit of an arrogant attitude to him. I didn't mind hitting him in the face with one or two snug shots, you know, for putting it nicely. I thought the kid was a little full of himself. The other guy wasn't too bad. He was actually pretty good. But
yes.
The match,
so mixed experience.
The match overall was not, you know, what I was expecting. I actually wanted a bit better of a match. Steve and I did win, so that's pretty cool.
That was cool.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I think sometimes, you know, with matches, everyone has their own kind of vision of how a match is going to turn out. And even beforehand, you'll have that kind of idea of how things are going to go. And when it doesn't quite exactly fit to plan, sometimes that can be a little bit difficult, or a bit of a reality shock when things don't go expected.
Absolutely.
Now, so after this match, all three of you came to the UK. How did you find that experience? Any you can jump in and just give, you know, any thoughts you have on what that was like coming to the UK to wrestle?
I had a blast. Out there. It was a dream, you know. You just wake up. Steve and I hit the gym, and then ate, and then we were in a van or a ring truck, you know, going to the next town, setting up and wrestling 2 or 3 times a night. I think we counted. Steve and I did 9 matches in 4 days, which is amazing.
Yeah, no, I remember my first weekend with LDN. I did 6 matches in 3 days, and it's definitely a really cool, in such a short space of time to be able to get that much ring time. It's really something. It's difficult, but it's really something, isn't it?
Steve, Sean, and I had a goal of starting a riot. Unfortunately, we were unsuccessful in that. Got close on, what was that, in Grays? We almost started one, but
yeah, Grays.
Yeah, Grays is an amazing venue. Really committed fans over there. So, Alex, how different are the UK and the American crowds?
I'd say the UK crowds are a little more forgiving, and they still look at it as kind of a sport, as the American crowds almost look at it in way of a entertainment industry. And they're not as giving. You got like spots like Philly and stuff like that. If you go out there and you have a stinker of a match, they're going to let you know about it. Where, I think we didn't get too much of a taste of England because we had only 4 dates. Hopefully later on this year, if the bans are lifted, we'll be back out there again to get a wider array of, fans and kind of get the full experience again.
Yeah, definitely. Steve, have you got anything to add about your experience coming over to the UK?
I definitely would echo what Alex said, but it was a lot of fun, man. Like, just working in front of those people that are so passionate about professional wrestling. We probably did a whole lot more like move-wise and spot-wise than we had to.
Yeah.
We realized by like the third night, oh, hey, they're more into like, sport and character rather than all these cool spots that we may or may not be able to do well.
Yeah.
I'd love to come back. We're working on coming back in August, but I mean, then the Rona hit, and I don't think that's going to happen this August. But hey, maybe shortly thereafter.
Yeah, we were talking.
Rona.
We were talking with Rona. We were talking with Sanjay before, and I'm on sort of the unfortunate side where I think, unfortunately, wrestling might not see a comeback until much later this year, or potentially 2021. It's kind of a more realistic way to look at things. There are a lot of companies at the moment in the UK shifting shows. They'll postpone a show or say their tickets roll over to the next one. But anything still in, July or August is still looking a little bit shaky, unfortunately, just because of the situation over here, which is a shame. But, eventually it will start again. It's going to, it will restart eventually.
What are the bands looking like over there? Are you guys still pretty much on lockdown? Because I know over here in Jersey, we're on lockdown as well. You got to wear a face mask everywhere. No public gatherings. Can't go visit friends and family and stuff like that.
Yeah, we do it anyway, though.
So we've just had a little bit of a lift. So you can now see someone from outside your house who is, and this will be useful for anyone listening in from the American side. So we've now had it lifted. So you can meet one person from outside your house and stay 2 meters away from them outside somewhere. To sort of catch up or possibly like play a sport or something. Then the other thing is that people who cannot work at home, apart from certain sectors like hospitality and things like that, if you can't work from home, they're now encouraging like construction and the film and TV industry to go back to work, but in a very sort of like restricted way. So we've had a little bit of a lift, but not very much. It's still quite close to, if you can stay home, do stay home. Yeah, and even if you do go out, there's not really much to do. So Sean, I've just been told this, and I've been told to ask about this. I don't really know, so you're gonna have to fill me in. Is it true you were essentially Donald Trump to the UK crowd and got ambushed by several dozens of kids at a show in Louise? What was it? I don't know how to pronounce it. Sanjay's just giving me the notes. He said one of the shows you were like basically the Donald Trump to the crowd, and you basically got mobbed.
So that is 100% true. It was I believe it was like our first show of the tour. We were in Luz, and in America we usually have like security guards and stuff, and like sometimes guardrails, so you can kind of get away with a lot more. I went out to the ring, and I started talking about my real life love of Donald Trump. I love Donald Trump. I would get his signature tattooed on me. So I started talking about just how great he is as a president, the whole nine. I called the people of Luz, I called them losers. And, toward the end of the show, I got my just desserts, got beat up a little bit, thrown out of the ring. and a group of maybe 20 to 30 children surrounded me on the floor. And, you know, I was thinking, oh, you know, my fans are coming to see me, right? No, I was very wrong. And I started feeling 20 to 30 little feet kicking every part of my body. So me, being the mature adult that I am, got terrified of children, and I crawled and hid under the ring until they all left.
That's amazing.
Very manly story.
That's amazing. That's definitely a UK crowd thing. I've seen so many family shows where there's not barriers, and the kids they'll you know, the baby faces and the good guys, they want to go over and help get them off the floor and pick them up, and the bad guys, they want to keep them there. Yeah. So it's safe to say that you guys really enjoyed your experience in the UK. I've picked up that you do want to come back over when you can.
Loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, right. Would love to come back.
I had a blast out there. I can't wait till everything's back up and running, and get to go over there and go over to Germany again as well. I was supposed to be out there the entire month of March, but then the Rona hit and cut my trip about a week and a half short. I got 2 really good weeks of training out there, but, you know, I wanted to do way more.
Yeah, no, definitely. I mean, that's something I'm looking at doing, is trying to get to more companies and train with different places in different parts of the world. In fact, New York and New Jersey is on my list, so you might see me at some point in the future.
That's the only way to get better, is to, you know, keep grinding and get to other places. You learn different styles. You know, you don't get better wrestling the same people every night, you know, unless those people have had TV experience and stuff like that.
Yeah.
Which is such a rare thing on the indies.
Yeah, definitely. Well, I really appreciate you guys' time. It's been fantastic to chat to you and to get to know a bit more about you and your experience wrestling with LDN. For the last few minutes, I'm going to bring Sanjay in. I think he's got a couple of stories that he kind of wants to share and have you guys chime in with. So get yourselves prepared.
Absolutely. I want to take you a little bit back. So first of all, let's go back to when I first met you guys, and I came to New York and then to New Jersey. And I asked all my American friends, or it's mainly wrestlers, what is New Jersey like? And one of them, who happens to be a pro wrestling magic wrestler, said it's the armpit of America.
That's true.
That was Jason Carrion. You can blame him. He said that to me. He said it's bad.
Not wrong.
Well, I went to an Italian restaurant before the show, and I got sick afterwards. So he wasn't wrong, that thing. But I want to say about my experience coming to America before I mention you guys coming here. I went to America. I didn't know a lot of the wrestlers. Obviously, I had done my research to know who you guys booked. I met Little Guido. I don't remember his wrestling name now. Little Guido wrestling. Nunzio, that's it.
He's fantastic.
What a nice guy. We had a nice long chat. I obviously just had Steve Gibkey over, so going back with him. And, you know, at first we were a bit like, ooh, do we stand in the corner? But it was so nice that we were welcomed into this locker room with people we don't really know that well in the middle, and everybody came up and said hello. So from our point of view, we was treated very professionally by Steve, his father, and the entire family. So I think I want to say thanks, first of all, for welcoming the LDN guys. But what I can't say thanks for is when we got in the ring and you guys cheated and defeated us. You know, and Steve Gibkey stole my lines in the ring, and then he cheated. And the whole night was Americans chanting I won't say the word, it's an English word that starts with W. They chanted at me.
Does it rhyme with banker?
Yes. And I was like, what's going on? They don't even know what it means. But they did cheat. So I thought it was only fair that if you won the first time, I'm going to bring you to England, and we're going to have round 2. So coming to the UK, hopefully you guys have had a good experience by the sounds of it. Some of the interesting things, I took them to Toby Carvery, which is like it's a roast dinner place.
It was beautiful.
I've never seen people eat so much food in my life. Honestly. I think they all had about 6 plates each. They called it Christmas dinner, and there was 2 other Americans and Zaylee Rude there as well. And Channing Thomas, TJ Crawford, so there's 5 other Americans. So that was interesting. But I want to talk about things that the people don't see, is that the camaraderie that we all got. You guys rode with Dave Walker, my referee, around the country. And I think you all bonded. We went to the best places to eat, the best kebab huts in Romford, Essex, where we all sat and had a kebab at 3 o'clock. How was it having a first kebab?
That was probably some of the best like street food I've
Yeah,
had.
definitely. I agree with that.
Like
I mean,
you
England has the best
don't
food,
get
period.
quality. You don't get quality like street food like that here in America. Like you might get like a dirty water hot dog, and that's about it. But like the kebab shops were definitely delicious.
Absolutely. Well, I know the best food places, as you can tell by the sight of me at times. So, but I will say that we had lots of fun travelling, and the shows weren't all close. Ipswich, 3 or 4 hours. You know, we're getting home at 3 or 4 o'clock in the morning, sometimes to the hotel, getting up at 10 o'clock, and the next day begins again. So, in terms of travelling, Steve Gibbs.
But you guys got to sleep till 10?
I was up. We got up to hit the gym.
Oh, please.
I couldn't sleep with Steve off snoring like a chainsaw.
Oh, yeah.
That was really
It
rough.
sounded like somebody was starting a chainsaw with me for 8 hours a night.
Oh,
So
well,
any of our
thankfully,
fans
I
in
was.
Uxbridge, I am so sorry y'all had to hear that.
Yeah, they have been barred from Uxbridge, my favourite town to go shopping, my local shopping centre. But we'll say this: that we did you guys obviously hosted the first 5-man tag. We did the rematch in Ipswich at the Corn Exchange, prestigious hall, good couple of 100 crowd there. And I want to just say that, just remind you, we haven't touched on this. The Brits beat the Americans. We set your packing.
I don't remember it that way.
That is true.
We did
Well,
win,
you're
but
like
we must say.
1-3 now.
1-1,
That's not that
so we
bad.
got to have a tiebreaker.
But we had an American, 2 Americans jump side and joined Team Britain. How do you feel about that? Insanely Rude joined the Brits. That must be a bit of a slap in the face, surely.
Sanjay, Benedict Arnold did the same thing, and the Americans still won after that.
Well, listen, I will say this, Steve, as you and Sean, the people at the top, we've got 1 fall each left. So we've got a tie here, and we've got to have a winner. So whether it's in England or the armpit of America, New Jersey, I think we've got to have one more match between the Brits and the Yanks one more time.
I'm ready for it. Let's do
Absolutely.
it. I mean, we can't do it today, but let's do it when we can.
Yeah,
Let's do it in neutral ground. Let's go to Russia.
I smell a
I
booking.
thought you was going to say something like North Korea there or something. I was having visions of Kim Jong-un being the special guest referee and horrified.
What about like Italy or Germany or something? Damn.
Germany doesn't like England. I don't know whether you've seen what's happened. We had a massive war with them, remember? They're not our most popular friends. Well, they are probably now. But, yeah, I think you'll have to be a little bit more neutral. Maybe Switzerland.
That works for me.
I'll tell you this. If there's Dave Walker and if there's Gammon, I'm there.
Yeah, same.
Yo, Gammon.
We don't have
But
that.
we don't have Gammon.
Do you
in the
not?
States,
Do you
so,
not have
like,
gammon in the States? That's mad.
No.
No.
we don't have it.
To be fair, Justin, they have chicken and they have beef, and look at the state of the Americans. So we can't give them gammon; they'll be even bigger.
Yeah, that's true. Yeah. It's a good thing. It's a blessing. It's a blessing.
Well, listen, I want to just say one final thing. That it's been a great honour having you guys. Very professional. We had a great laugh, and there's a rivalry in the ring, yes, but outside the ring, there's a lot of respect. So I look forward to meeting again and doing it all again.
Hell yeah, let's do it again as soon as we legally and safely can. Let's do it again.
Absolutely.
Amazing. All right, that's all the time that we have for today's episode, guys. I really appreciate you joining me. I can't thank you enough. It's been fantastic to chat to you. I hope you all stay safe, and hopefully we can all meet at some point in the future.
Absolutely.
Likewise, man. Thank you for having us.
Likewise, thank you for having us, man. Stay safe. And LDN Wrestling, thank you for having us. People of England, we love you here in America. Thank you.
Amazing. Thanks, guys. So, ladies and gentlemen, that concludes this week's episode of LDN Underground. I'd like to thank you for listening in, and I'd like to thank my guests for joining me. It's been an incredible episode, and I've really enjoyed speaking to everyone, and I hope you've enjoyed it too. Next week, I've got some incredible guests lined up, including Jason Carrion. So be sure to follow along the LDN Wrestling Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, follow us on SoundCloud, and subscribe to YouTube to make sure you don't miss out. I'll see you next week on LDN Underground.
Take you now to London. These are dangerous days.